A 6-year-old girl had been missing for 3 days when faint thumps echoed from inside a trunk at the scrapyard. The millionaire, who found her unconscious, could hardly imagine that this dirt-covered face held a secret capable of shattering and rebuilding his heart at the same time. What he saw when she opened her eyes would forever change both of their destinies. Subscribe to the channel for heartwarming stories every day. The scrapyard stretched out like a cemetery of broken dreams, with each metal carcass telling silent stories of journeys that never reached their destination. A light afternoon rain created small puddles among the abandoned cars, creating distorted reflections of the grey clouds that covered the sky. The millionaire walked among the wreckage with measured steps, his designer clothes completely unsuitable for that environment of rust and burnt oil. At 45, he carried on his shoulders the weight of an empire built on a foundation of obsessive work and voluntary isolation. His eyes, once bright, had lost their spark exactly 7 years ago, when life snatched away what mattered most to him with the same speed as his collection of classic cars. He was looking for parts for a 1962 Ferrari 250 GT, one of the projects he used to fill the void of sleepless nights. In the mornings, he ran his company with an iron fist. In the afternoons, he scoured junkyards. In the evenings, he drank expensive whiskey alone in his empty mansion, staring at a faded photograph where a pregnant woman smiled at the camera. The owner of the junkyard followed him at a respectful distance, knowing that this man paid well for rare parts. He was a strange customer, but punctual and silent, exactly how he liked his business. Among the older cars, a dark blue Volvo from the 90s caught the millionaire's attention. The bodywork was surprisingly well preserved, and he approached to examine the headlights that could be used for another project. The wind made the dry leaves dance around his expensive shoes, creating a melancholic symphony that seemed to match the rhythm of his loneliness. His hands, which signed million-dollar contracts without trembling, hesitated for a moment before touching the car door handle. There was something in the air, an inexplicable tension that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. But he brushed the feeling aside. After 7 years immersed in work, he had learned to ignore omens and intuitions. The rain intensified, creating a hypnotic rhythm on the metal roofs of the abandoned cars. The sound echoed strangely, almost as if there were other beats mixed into the natural melody of the storm. The millionaire stopped walking, closed his eyes and listened carefully. Thump, thump, thump. 3 faint knocks, almost imperceptible, stood out from the noise of the rain. They came from somewhere nearby, but he couldn't pinpoint the origin. The junkyard owner kept talking about prices and availability, oblivious to what his client had noticed. The sound repeated, even weaker, like a heart losing the battle against time. The millionaire spun in a circle, trying to locate the source. His business instincts, sharpened by years of negotiations and quick decisions, whispered that there was something important there, something he couldn't ignore. He approached the Volvo again, this time with a different purpose. The knocks seemed to be coming from inside the vehicle, but when he looked through the fogged-up windows, he saw nothing but torn seats and a dust-covered steering wheel. It was then that his gaze turned to the rear of the car, where the key was still in the trunk lock. The millionaire's hands trembled imperceptibly as he turned the trunk key. The click of the mechanism echoed in the damp air, like the starting gun for a race he didn't know he was about to begin. The trunk opened slowly, revealing a damp darkness that exhaled a smell of mold and something more subtle, a sweetish, childlike perfume that caused an inexplicable pang in his chest. It took his eyes a few seconds to adjust to the dim light, and when they did, the world stopped. Curled up in a corner, covered in dirty rags that must have once been a pink dress, was a little girl. Her brown hair, stuck to her head by a mixture of dirt and sweat, framed a small, angelic face. She was unconscious, breathing irregularly, her chapped lips indicating severe dehydration. The millionaire fell to his knees beside the car as if he had been punched in the stomach. The impact of the discovery came not only from the child's deplorable condition, but from something much deeper and more disturbing. That face, the delicate features, the shape of the eyes, the gentle curve of the eyebrows. It was like looking through time and seeing a ghost of his most precious memory. The resemblance to his wife was so striking that for a moment he thought he was hallucinating. "My God," he murmured, the words coming out like a broken prayer. With extreme care he touched the girl's wrist, feeling her skin was too hot. She had a fever. When he gently lifted her head, he saw small wounds on her scalp and signs of dehydration that indicated she had been there for at least 2 or 3 days. The junkyard owner approached, his eyes widening when he saw the contents of the trunk. "I didn't know," he stammered. "I swear to God, I didn't know there was a child here. That car's been here for months. I never thought to open the trunk." The millionaire didn't respond. He was mesmerized by the girl's features, his mind making connections that his heart refused to accept as coincidence. With extremely careful movements, he took her out of the trunk, surprised by how light she was, dangerously light. It was then that he saw the locket. Hanging from a torn and dirty string, attached to the child's thin neck, was a small silver locket that he recognized instantly. His hands trembled uncontrollably when he touched it. The initials engraved on the oxidized surface shone like accusations. E.M. Elena Martinez, his wife who had died 7 years ago. The world around him disappeared. The rain, the junkyard, the smells and sounds, everything turned into a meaningless blur. There was only that child in his arms and the locket she carried, the same locket that he had placed around his wife's neck on their 5th wedding anniversary. Tears that he hadn't shed in years began to run down his face, mixing with the rain. They were tears of confusion, of resurfacing pain, but also of something he didn't dare name: hope. "Call an ambulance," he said to the junkyard owner, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Now!" While he waited, he held the girl against his chest, protecting her from the rain with his expensive coat. He whispered nonsense words, promises he didn't know how to explain, while his eyes studied every detail of that face that seemed to have come from his most painful and impossible dreams. When the ambulance siren cut through the air, the millionaire made a decision that would change his life. Forever, he wouldn't leave that child alone. It didn't matter who she was or where she came from. Something inside him, something that had been dead for years, awakened in that damp trunk. Something that whispered a single impossible word: daughter. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and unspoken possibilities. The millionaire remained seated in an uncomfortable chair in the hallway, still wearing his junkyard-stained clothes, while doctors and nurses rushed by in their routines of saving lives. It had been 3 hours since they arrived. The girl had been taken to intensive care, where a team was fighting to stabilize her condition. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, some superficial injuries, and a persistent fever. It was a miracle she was alive. During that time, the millionaire called 3 people: his driver to ask him to bring clean clothes, his secretary to cancel all appointments for the week, and his personal lawyer for matters he didn't yet know how to formulate. "Sir," said the head nurse, approaching with a clipboard, "we need some information about the child. Are you her father?" The question echoed like a gunshot. He hesitated, the locket weighing like lead in his pocket. He had carefully removed it from the girl's neck, promising to return it when she woke up. I found her at the junkyard." "Have you called the police?" "Yes, sir. They're on their way. Can you give us any information about her? Name, age, family?" He shook his head, feeling a growing frustration. How could he explain the inexplicable connection he felt? How could he talk about the locket without sounding like a lunatic? When the police arrived, the questions became more specific and insistent. The detective, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, sat next to him. "Mr. Martinez, right? The businessman. Well, I want you to know we're grateful for your good deed. But I need to understand, what were you doing at the junkyard?" The millionaire explained about his search for parts for classic cars, a hobby he had practiced for years. His version sounded true because it was true, but there was something in his eyes that conveyed an intensity that went beyond simple good. "Citizenship. And you've never seen this child before, are you sure?" "I'm sure," he replied, but his voice faltered. How could he explain that, somehow impossibly, he felt like he had known that face all his life? Dr. Stevens, the pediatrician in charge of the case, appeared after a few hours. He was a young man with a serious but gentle expression. "She's stable now. It was close. A few more hours and it would have been too late. I need to talk to whoever." Found her. The millionaire stood up immediately. "Can I see her?" "In a few minutes, but first, I need to ask you, do you have any connection to this child? Because there's something strange here." The millionaire's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "Well, children in this situation are usually reported missing quickly, but we haven't found any missing person reports about her in the last few days. It's like nobody has missed her." Those words pierced like knives. A 6-year-old child, lost for days and no one looking. How was that possible? "There's one more thing," continued the doctor, hesitant. "When we examined her clothes, we found something in her pocket, a very old and worn photograph." The doctor handed over a small photograph, folded and torn at the corners. The image was faded, but it was still possible to distinguish two people, a pregnant woman smiling and a man next to her, with his arm protectively around her shoulders. The millionaire looked at the photo and felt his legs weaken. It was himself, 7 years younger, next to his pregnant wife. The same photo he kept at home, but this version seemed to have passed through 1,000 hands, 1,000 destinies. This is, he stammered, unable to finish the sentence. "Do you recognize these people in the photo?" For a moment, the millionaire considered lying, fleeing from that impossible situation that defied everything he believed he knew about his life. But when he raised his eyes and saw the white door of the room where the girl rested, he knew it was too late to back down. "It's me," he admitted, his voice almost inaudible. "Me and my wife, who died 7 years ago." The door to the room opened like a passage to an unknown territory. The millionaire entered with hesitant steps, followed by Dr. Stevens, who observed every movement with medical and human interest. The girl was lying in a white bed, too small for the space she occupied. Machines monitored her vital signs with soft, regular beeps. They had cleaned her face and hair, revealing the true extent of the resemblance that had shaken him in the junkyard. Her eyes were closed, but the rapid movement under her eyelids indicated that she was dreaming, or nightmare, he thought, considering the circumstances in which he had found her. "She hasn't fully woken up yet," explained the doctor in a low voice. "But her recovery is progressing surprisingly quickly. Children are resilient." The millionaire pulled a chair closer to the bed, his eyes fixed on the girl's serene face. He studied every detail, the curve of her brown eyelashes, the delicate shape of her nose, the small rosy lips that, even chapped, maintained an angelic sweetness. "Were there more things in her pocket?" he asked, without looking away. "Just the photo and this necklace." The doctor handed over a simple string with colorful beads, clearly handmade. "Looks like a child's thing." Suddenly the girl's eyes opened. The impact was instant and devastating. They were the same eyes, the exact same hazel green eyes as his wife, with that golden shimmer around the pupils that he hadn't seen in 7 years. For a moment, it was as if Elena was looking at him through that child, sending a message from beyond that he couldn't decipher. The girl blinked a few times, disoriented. Her eyes scanned the unfamiliar environment with a disconcerting maturity. For someone so young, when her gaze met the millionaire's, she showed no fear, only a cautious curiosity. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse but surprisingly strong. "In the hospital," replied Dr. Stevens gently. "You were very sick. This gentleman found you and brought you here to take care of you." Her eyes turned back to the millionaire, studying him intently. There was something in that look, a mutual recognition that didn't make sense, but that was undeniably present. "Thank you," she said simply. The millionaire felt a lump in his throat. The voice was different, higher-pitched, younger, but the tone, the intonation, the way she pronounced the words, it was a disturbing echo of his memory. "What's your name?" he asked, his own voice betraying his emotion. The girl hesitated, frowning as if she was trying to remember something difficult. "People call me a lot of names," she finally replied, "but I like Maria." "Maria." He repeated the name, savoring each letter. "It's a beautiful name." "You found me in the car?" she asked, showing a lucidity that impressed the doctor. "Yes, do you remember how you got there?" Her eyes became distant, as if she was accessing painful and confused memories. "I was running. Someone was chasing me. I found the car open and got in. I guess I fell asleep." She stopped, touching her neck instinctively. "Where's my necklace?" "The locket." The millionaire touched his own pocket, feeling the weight of the locket. "It's with me. It's safe. I'll give it back when you're better." She studied him for a few more seconds, then said something that made his heart stop. "You cried when you found me. I heard you, even when I was unconscious. Why did you cry?" The question echoed in the silence of the room. Dr. Stevens looked curiously at the millionaire, who was temporarily speechless. "Sometimes," he said finally, "we cry when we find something we thought was lost forever." The girl nodded with precocious wisdom and closed her eyes again, but kept her hand outstretched towards him. Without hesitating, the millionaire took it. In his, so small, so fragile, but carrying an inexplicable strength. At that moment, something indefinable settled between them. A connection that defied logic and probability, but that felt more real than anything he had experienced in the last 7 years. 3 days had passed since the girl's first awakening. The millionaire had become a constant presence at the hospital, arriving early in the morning and leaving only when visiting hours ended. His driver brought meals from expensive restaurants, which he barely touched, and clean clothes that he changed mechanically. Maria, as she insisted on being called, was recovering quickly. Her physical strength returned every day, but it was the conversations between them that revealed the true extent of her situation. "I never knew my last name," she told him one afternoon, playing with a teddy bear he had brought. "The people at the shelter said I arrived when I was a baby, that no one knew where I came from." The millionaire leaned forward, each of her words reconstructing an impossible puzzle. "Do you remember how long you stayed at the shelter?" "A few years, but it wasn't a good place." Her eyes darkened. "The woman who took care of us was mean. She hit the children when they cried. One day, I decided to run away." "And how did you survive on the streets?" Maria shrugged with the naturalness of someone reporting ordinary acts. "There are a lot of people on the streets who help. Old Joe, who sells newspapers, always gave me food. Clara, from the farmer's market, let me carry bags in exchange for fruit. I slept in different places every night." The millionaire's heart contracted with each description. 6 years of life on the streets, a child who should be playing, studying, being protected by a family. "Maria," he said slowly, "the locket you wear, do you know where it came from?" She touched her neck instinctively. "It's always been mine." The lady at the shelter said I had it when I arrived. She said there was a letter too, but it got lost. A letter? Yes. It talked about two people who loved me very much, but who couldn't stay with me. I was too young to understand, but the lady told me when I got older. The millionaire felt his hands trembling. He took the locket out of his pocket and returned it to her, watching how she held it with instinctive reverence. What else do you know about those people? The lady said there was an accident, that they died, but I survived because I was born early. Maria looked at him with big, questioning eyes. Why are you asking all these questions? Did you know me before? The question he feared most was finally on the table. How to explain the impossible. How to tell a child that she carried the face and eyes of the woman he loved, that the locket she protected also belonged to this woman, that 7 years ago he had lost everything in an accident that now seemed to not have taken everything. He began, but was interrupted by the arrival of the social worker. Sandra was a woman in her 40s with a serious expression and a clipboard always in her hands. Her daily visits had a purpose: to determine the girl's future. "Mr. Martinez, can we talk?" she said, gesturing towards the hallway. They left, leaving Maria with a storybook that the hospital had provided. "We have a problem," Sandra began. "We haven't found any birth records for her. Officially, this child doesn't exist." "What do you mean she doesn't exist?" "No documents, no registration with official agencies. It's as if she's a ghost, and that complicates everything." The millionaire felt a chill run down his spine. "What's the standard procedure in these cases?" "Normally, she would be placed in a temporary shelter while we investigate. But there's another complication." Sandra hesitated. "We received a call earlier today. Someone is claiming to have rights to the child." "Who?" "A woman who identifies herself as Lucy Fernandez. She says she was an employee of an old shelter and that she has documents proving she took care of the girl for years. She wants to claim custody." The millionaire's world trembled. Everything indicated that Maria was being pulled back into a life she had tried to escape. "What if I wanted to become responsible for her temporarily?" he asked, surprised by his own audacity. Sandra studied him carefully. "Mr. Martinez, you have the resources, that's clear. But there are protocols, background checks, and there would need to be a justifiable reason for a stranger to assume responsibility." Stranger. The word echoed in his mind like an insult. How could he be a stranger to someone who carried Elena's face, who possessed her eyes, who carried her locket? That night, alone in his empty mansion, the millionaire made a decision. He picked up the phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. "Dr. Bennett, this is Robert Martinez. I need a DNA test. It's urgent." The lab sent a specialized technician to the hospital the following morning. The millionaire had explained to Maria that they would do a simple exam to check her overall health. It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. While they awaited the results that would take 3 days to be ready, the investigation he had initiated began to reveal its first findings. The private investigator he hired was named Mark, a meticulous and discreet ex-cop. "Mr. Martinez," Mark said during a private meeting at the hospital cafeteria, "I found disturbing information about the accident 7 years ago." The millionaire leaned forward, his heart racing. "The official report says your wife and the baby died on impact, but there are discrepancies in the hospital records. One of the nurses who worked that night was fired shortly afterwards, under allegations of irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" "I'm still investigating, but I managed to locate a former employee who was there that night. She's willing to talk to us, but in secret. It seems there's something the hospital covered up." That same day, the millionaire received a call that made his blood run cold. "Mr. Martinez, this is Lucy Fernandez. I believe the social worker mentioned my interest in the girl." The voice was harsh, calculating. Yes, she did. Well, I want you to know that I have all the legal rights to her. Documents proving I took care of her for years. It would be a shame if she had to go through more trauma, being separated from the only person she knows. There was a veiled threat in those words. What if I decide to contest custody? Lucy laughed, an unpleasant sound. Mr. Martinez, you're rich, but that doesn't change facts. I'm the one with the documents, and there's certain information about the girl's past that you might not want to come to light. The call ended abruptly, leaving the millionaire with more questions than answers. 2 days later, the nurse who had worked at the hospital during the accident finally agreed to talk. Her name was Karen, and she insisted on meeting in a neutral location, a small coffee shop downtown. Karen was a woman in her 60s with tired but honest eyes. I was there that night, she began, stirring nervously in a cup of tea. Your wife arrived already in advanced labor because of the accident. The baby was born premature, but alive. The world stopped. Alive? Repeated the millionaire, barely able to form the words. Yes, small, needing intensive care, but alive. It was Nurse Davis who initially took care of the child. And what happened? Karen hesitated, looking around as if she feared being overheard. Davis was involved in an illegal scheme. He sold babies to desperate couples or to people who did other types of business with children. That night, with all the confusion of the accident, the documentation became hazy. The millionaire felt a growing nausea. Are you saying my daughter was falsely declared dead and taken by Davis? I tried to report it, but who was going to believe a nurse against his word and the doctors? Davis had connections, influence. And where is Davis now? He died 2 years ago. But before that, I heard rumors that he was remorseful, that he had left some children in clandestine shelters with people who promised to take care of them. The millionaire's phone rang. It was the lab with the DNA results. Mr. Martinez, the results are ready. When can you come pick them up? With trembling hands, he scheduled it for an hour later. Karen held his hand before he stood up. If the girl you found is really your daughter, she said gently, know that you're facing people who won't give up easily. Davis may be dead, but the network he created still exists. An hour later, in a sterile room at the lab, the millionaire opened an envelope that would change his life forever. Paternal match 99.7%. The words danced in his vision. 7 years of mourning, 7 years believing he had lost everything, and all this time his daughter was surviving on the streets, carrying her mother's locket and looking for a family that never knew it was looking for her. His tears fell on the paper, celebration and pain mixed in an emotion too complex to have a name. He had found his daughter. Now he needed to fight to keep her. The revelation of the DNA test changed everything and nothing at the same time. Legally, the millionaire now knew that Maria was his biological daughter, but legally, that didn't mean he would have automatic rights over her. Years of forced absence, falsified documents, and a network of corruption created obstacles that money alone couldn't solve quickly. Lucy Fernandez appeared at the hospital the following morning, accompanied by a lean lawyer with cold eyes. The millionaire watched from afar as she chatted animatedly with Sandra, the social worker, gesturing vigorously and brandishing a folder full of documents. Daddy? Maria called him. She had started calling him that spontaneously, and every time he heard the word, something healed and broke simultaneously in his chest. What is it, honey? That woman. Maria pointed discreetly at Lucy. I know her. His heart raced. From where? Maria's eyes darkened, and for the first time since he'd met her, he saw real fear in her face. From the shelter. She wasn't an employee. She was someone who showed up sometimes. The children were afraid of her. She took some of us away, and they never came back. The millionaire's blood ran cold. Lucy wasn't just an opportunist trying to take advantage of the situation. She was directly connected to the criminal network that had kidnapped his daughter 7 years ago. "Listen, Maria," he said, kneeling beside the bed to be at her eye level. "I need you to trust me. I won't let anyone take you, but you need to tell me everything about that woman." Before Maria could answer, Lucy entered the room unceremoniously, followed by her lawyer and Sandra, who seemed uncomfortable with the situation. "Ah, my dear girl," exclaimed Lucy in an artificially sweet voice, "how I missed you when you ran away from the shelter." Maria instinctively hid behind the millionaire, clutching his arm tightly. "Mr. Martinez," intervened Lucy's lawyer, "a man named Valdez. My client has legal documents proving that she has had responsibility for this child for years. Ms. Fernandez formally registered temporary guardianship when the child was abandoned at her institution. And I have a DNA test proving she's my daughter," replied the millionaire, his voice controlled but loaded with tension. Lucy laughed, an unpleasant sound. "DNA? Anyone can fabricate those tests. And even if it were true, where have you been for the last 6 years? This child was in my care." "Care?" Maria's voice trembled but gained strength. "You called it care when you locked us in the basement, when you didn't give us food for days when someone disobeyed?" The silence that followed was deafening. Sandra made rapid notes, her eyes going from Lucy to Maria. "These are serious accusations," Sandra said slowly. "They're lies from a traumatized child," declared Valdez quickly. "My client has dedicated years of her life caring for these abandoned children." The millionaire felt the anger rising like lava in his veins, but before he could respond, Dr. Stevens entered the room. "Sorry to interrupt, but I need to talk to everyone involved. Now." He led them to a reserved meeting room. "I received a report from the lab personnel," began Dr. Stevens, looking directly at Lucy. "It's interesting how 2 hours after the DNA material was collected, someone tried to bribe a technician to alter the results." Lucy paled slightly but maintained her composure. "That's ridiculous. I don't know what you're talking about." "There are security cameras in the lab, Ms. Fernandez, and the technician had the wisdom to record the conversation." The lawyer Valdez whispered something in Lucy's ear, who stood up abruptly. "We'll appeal through other means. This child legally belongs to me, and I won't allow lies to take her from my custody." After her departure, Sandra turned to the millionaire. "Mr. Martinez, I need to investigate these allegations about mistreatment. And there's something else. We managed to locate some old records. Your name was on a list of people who were looking for missing children a few years ago." His heart leaped. It was true. In the first years after the accident, when there was still a spark of hope that his family might be alive, he had hired investigators, placed ads, searched every legal shelter he knew. "If we can prove that you actively searched for the child, and if the allegations about mistreatment are confirmed, we'll have a strong case," continued Sandra. "But it won't be easy. Lucy has powerful allies." That night, alone at home, the millionaire received an anonymous call. "Mr. Martinez, you don't know me, but I have information that may interest you about the woman who wants to take your daughter." "Who are you?" "Someone who escaped her network. Can we meet tomorrow?" The meeting was set for a discreet cafe. When he arrived, he found a young woman in her early 20s, thin and with haunted eyes. "My name is Anna," she said, trembling slightly. "I was also a child from the shelter. Lucy took me when I was 8 years old. She doesn't take care of children. She sells them." The millionaire's stomach churned. For what? Child labor, mostly. But there are worse fates. I escaped at 15. I tried to report it, but who believes a street girl against a woman with documents and influence? Anna handed him a folder. I've collected evidence for years, names, dates, places. Other children who went through this. Some are still trapped in her network. The millionaire examined the documents with growing horror. Why are you helping me? Because I saw your daughter on TV. The way she looks at you. That's how I looked. At someone I believed would save me, but never came. Tears streamed down Anna's face. Don't let her go through what I went through. Returning to the hospital, the millionaire found Maria sleeping but restless. She mumbled during her sleep, broken words that seemed like nightmares. Daddy. She woke up when he gently touched her face. I'm here, honey. I dreamed they were taking me back. To the dark place. He held her small hand in his. That will never happen, I promise. How can you be sure? For a moment, he hesitated. How to explain to a 6-year-old the complex legal twists and turns and the real dangers they faced? Because I found out that I'm your real father, and fathers protect their children. Maria studied him with those eyes that were mirrors of the mother he lost. And you'll always want me, even if I do bad things? The question broke his heart. How many times had this child been rejected to have such insecurity? Always, he said firmly. No matter what happens, you're my daughter, and nothing will change. That, for the first time since he found her, Maria smiled truly, not just a polite smile, but an explosion of pure joy that illuminated the entire room. Then let's fight together, she said with a determination that surprised him with her maturity. Outside, watching through the window, a shadowy figure noted something on a clipboard before disappearing into the night. The war for Maria had only just begun. The millionaire's lawyer, Dr. Frank Delgado, was a man known for winning impossible cases. When the millionaire presented all the material he had collected, Anna's documents, the evidence of the bribery at the lab, the testimonies about mistreatment, Frank's eyes gleamed with the fire of a battle worth fighting. We have enough material to completely destroy her credibility, analyzed Frank, spreading documents across the table in his office. But there's a problem. Some judges in the juvenile court have connections with influential people in her network. What are you saying? That we need to be strategic, not just about when to attack, but about where. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Maria showed a strength that surprised everyone. Sandra had brought in a child psychologist to evaluate her, and the child, with a clarity impressive for her age, reported years of abuse and neglect. There were 20 children at the shelter, Maria told the psychologist, Dr. Lewis. But it wasn't a real shelter. It was a big, dirty house. Lucy told us that we were rejected by our families, that we should be grateful that she gave us food. And how did you escape? And I heard her talking on the phone about selling me to someone who liked quiet children. I didn't understand it at the time, but I knew it was bad. I ran away that night. Each word was a dagger in the millionaire's heart, who watched through the glass with the psychologist's permission. Dr. Lewis approached him after the session. She's an extraordinary child, traumatized but with an impressive resilience, and there's something else. She hesitated. What? She drew you and her together, even before we knew about the DNA test. When I asked why, she said she had dreamed of a man who had been looking for her for a long time. There's an emotional connection here that goes beyond biology. That afternoon, Frank brought crucial news. I got a temporary restraining order. Lucy Fernandez is being investigated for child trafficking and document fraud. She can't approach Maria for 72 hours. The partial victory was celebrated with caution. The millionaire knew that 72 hours was a short time, and Lucy wouldn't be defeated easily. On the second night of the court protection, something happened that changed the game completely. The millionaire's phone rang at 3 a.m. It was Dr. Stevens with a worried voice. Mr. Martinez, there was an attempted break-in at the hospital. 3 men tried to get into Maria's room. Security detained them, but they fled. His blood ran cold. How's Maria? Scared, but physically unharmed. Mr. Martinez, it's no longer safe to keep her here. In a quick decision, the millionaire arranged for Maria's transfer to his mansion with 24-hour private security. When she saw the house for the first time, her eyes widened. "It's very big," she said simply. "Would you like to choose a room?" He offered. They walked through the house, Maria observing everything with respectful curiosity. When they reached the room that he had mentally designated for her, close to his, overlooking the garden, she stopped at the door. "This room has the same smell," she murmured. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes when I dreamed of a room like this, with the same smell of flowers and something sweet. Elena's perfume. Even 7 years later, it still lingered subtly in the air of the house. That night, while Maria slept in her new bed, she had insisted on keeping the light on. The millionaire sat beside her, watching her. Anna had agreed to stay at the house for a few nights to help Maria adapt. The presence of someone who understood her experience provided invaluable comfort. "Mr. Roberto." Anna appeared at the door. "Please, just call me Robert." "Robert, there's something you need to know about Lucy and her network." Anna hesitated, gathering her courage. "They won't give up, and they know how to hurt." "What do you mean?" "They find out what we love most and use it against us. In your case, Maria has already suffered a lot. They'll try to use that, try to convince her that you'll abandon her too." Anna's words proved prophetic. The next day, Maria received a doll in the mail, an apparently innocent gift, but it came with a note. "Rich daddies get tired of broken toys. We'll be back to get you when he gets bored of you." Maria handed the note to the millionaire with trembling hands. He pulled her into his arms, feeling her smallness against his chest. "Maria, look at me," he said, lifting her chin gently. "Do you believe in me?" "Yes." "Then believe this. I searched for you for 7 years. I didn't know you existed, but my heart knew something was missing. Now that I've found you, moving mountains would be easier than making me give you up." Tears streamed down Maria's eyes, not of fear, but of something deeper. For the first time in her young life, someone was fighting for her. "Can I cry?" she asked, her voice small. "You can cry as much as you want, honey, and I'll be here when you stop." And so she cried, years of pain, abandonment, fear, and loneliness, coming out in sobs that echoed through the mansion like a lament and a relief simultaneously. Frank appeared the next day with news that changed everything. "We got her," he announced, almost smiling. "Anna gave us enough information to locate some of the children who are still with Lucy. The police did a raid last night." The millionaire's heart raced. "And they found 15 children in deplorable conditions. Lucy was arrested along with 4 accomplices. The judge granted you emergency custody of Maria, and there's a hearing scheduled to formalize the permanent adoption." It was a victory, but the millionaire knew that the real battle had been winning Maria's heart. And in that battlefield, love had triumphed over fear. That night, while tucking Maria into bed, she held his hand. "Robert?" "Yes?" "Can I call you Dad? For real? There's nothing in the world I want more." "Then good night, Dad." "Good night, my daughter." For the first time in 7 years, the millionaire felt complete. The day of the final hearing arrived. Like a golden dawn after a long storm, the millionaire chose a navy blue suit, Elena's favorite color, while Maria wore a simple white dress that Anna had helped her choose. They had become close friends, and Anna now worked as the millionaire's personal assistant, helping with Maria and other children who had been rescued from Lucy's network. The courtroom was crowded. In addition to the legal family and authorities, there were representatives from the press who had become interested in the story. The case had become a symbol of hope for many families separated by tragic circumstances. Judge Peterson entered the room, a grey-haired man with kind but firm eyes. The millionaire noticed Maria stiffening beside him. Courtroom still made her nervous. "It's okay," he whispered, holding her small hand. "We're here together." Frank presented the case masterfully, constructing a narrative that revealed not only the biological connection between father and daughter, but the emotional journey they had traveled together. He showed the evidence of Lucy's crimes, the documents that proved the millionaire's continuous search for his daughter, and the psychological reports that attested to Maria's well-being under his care. Dr. Stevens testified about the condition in which Maria was found and her remarkable recovery. "In 40 years of medicine, I have rarely seen such a profound transformation in a child," he said. "The safety and love she feels now are palpable." Dr. Lewis, the psychologist, presented her evaluations. Maria has not only adapted exceptionally well to her new environment, but demonstrates a capacity to love and trust that is remarkable considering her traumatic past. The relationship with her father is genuine and healing for both of them. When it came time for Maria to speak, the judge had explained gently that he wanted to hear her feelings. She stood up with her shoulders straight, displaying a courage that impressed everyone. "Mr. Judge," she began in a clear voice, "I know I'm little, and maybe I don't understand all the adult things, but I understand love." Many in the hearing felt their eyes filling with tears. "Before I met my dad, I didn't know I had one. I thought I was like the other children at the shelter, with no one who really wanted me. But from the first day, he looks at me like I'm the most precious thing in the world." She turned to the millionaire, smiling. "He cries with me when I'm sad, laughs at my silly jokes, and lets me eat ice cream for breakfast sometimes. But the most important thing is that even when he needs to work or has important people to see, he always comes back to me. He said he'll want me forever, and I believe him." The judge nodded slowly, clearly touched. "Maria, do you want to stay with your father?" "Yes, Mr. Judge, I want it very much." "And is there anything else you'd like to tell me?" Maria hesitated, then said something that caught everyone by surprise. "I want you to know that I don't have anger towards Lucy or the bad people. They're sick inside, and maybe one day someone will help them like my dad helped me, but I don't want to go back there ever again." The defense attorney, representing the last interests of Lucy, who was in prison, made a futile attempt to question the millionaire's suitability based on his previously solitary life. Frank destroyed those arguments easily, demonstrating how the love for Maria had transformed the man. Anna was called to testify, and her speech was devastating to any remaining sympathy for the criminal network. "Mr. Judge, I was Maria's age when I was taken. I spent years dreaming that someone would come to save me. No one came. But today, seeing Maria with her father, I see what should have happened to me and hundreds of other children. This man is not just adopting a child, he's giving hope back to all of us who survived." The final deliberation took 2 hours. When the judge returned with his decision, the silence in the room was absolute. "After carefully analyzing all the testimonies and evidence," began Judge Peterson, "this court recognizes that, although the circumstances that separated this family were tragic and criminal, the reunion represents a rare and precious second chance." The millionaire's heart was beating so hard that he feared everyone could hear it. The biological connection is indisputable. More importantly, the emotional connection is genuine and mutually beneficial. Maria has demonstrated exceptional clarity about her wishes, and Robert Martinez has demonstrated unwavering commitment to her well-being. A pause that seemed to last forever. Therefore, This court grants the permanent adoption. Robert Martinez is officially recognized as the legal father and guardian of Maria Martinez. The room exploded in applause. Maria jumped into the millionaire's arms, who lifted her up, both crying with joy. "Dad, Dad," she repeated, as if savoring the word. Frank smiled broadly while Anna cried with happiness, wiping her eyes with a handkerchief offered by Dr. Stevens. Later, already at home, while they celebrated with a special dinner prepared by the new cook, Maria had insisted that they needed someone who knew how to bake cookies. The millionaire took Maria to the garden. Under the stars, he showed her a special place, a small memorial he had created for Elena, with a stone bench and a rose bush. "I want you to meet your mother," he said softly. Maria gently touched the white roses. "Was she pretty like me?" she asked, without vanity, just curiosity. "You're exactly like her, inside and out. Do you think she's happy?" The millionaire looked at the stars, feeling a peace that he hadn't experienced for years. "I'm sure she is. She always wanted to have a daughter, and she always wanted me to be happy." Maria took his hand. "Then we're a complete family now, you, me, and her in our hearts." "Yes, honey, we're a complete family." They stood there for a while, in comfortable silence, each processing the magnitude of the journey they had traveled together. The full moon shone upon them, silent witness to two souls who had found their way back to each other through the most improbable circumstances, proving that some bonds transcend time, tragedy, and distance. Love had won once again. 6 months after the official adoption, the house that once echoed with lonely silence overflowed with life. The once empty hallways were now filled with the hurried steps of Maria and the crystalline laughter that spread like music throughout the rooms. The millionaire had changed in ways he never imagined possible. His mornings began no longer with financial reports, but with shared breakfast, where Maria recounted extraordinary dreams and plans for the day. His company now operated on flexible hours. He had discovered that being a father was the most important profession he had ever held. "Dad, are you coming to the school recital today?" asked Maria one sunny morning while playing with colorful cereal in her bowl. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," he replied, noticing how the word "dad" still made his heart race with happiness every time he heard it. Maria had enrolled in a welcoming private school where, initially shy, she now shone with growing confidence. Her teachers reported an exceptionally empathetic child who transformed when she spoke about her family. Anna continued to live with them and had become not only an employee but part of the family. She was studying psychology at night, inspired by her own journey and the desire to help other children. "You gave me a second chance," she said once to the millionaire. "Now I want to pass it on." The foundation that the millionaire established, the Elena and Maria Institute, had become a national model for the reintegration of children who were victims of trafficking. Lucy and her network faced multiple sentences, and more than 40 children had been rescued and placed in loving families. On a special afternoon, when Maria turned 7, they had a get-together in the garden. Several of the rescued children came with their new families, a rainbow of stories of hope. "Look at all these families," commented Maria, watching children playing with their new parents. "We started a wave of love, didn't we?" The millionaire smiled, impressed once again with his daughter's precocious wisdom. During the party, he noticed Maria talking seriously with a younger girl who had recently arrived in a foster family. "What were you talking about?" he asked later. "She was scared," explained Maria. "She said she couldn't believe that anyone would really want her. I told her about you, how you looked for me even without knowing I existed, how love is stronger than anything bad that might have happened." At that moment, watching Maria comfort another child with the same tenderness that he had offered her, The millionaire understood that his journey had created something bigger than a family. It had created a legacy. At night, after everyone had left, they followed a tradition they had established, walking to Elena's memorial before bed. "Mom," said Maria to the photograph while arranging fresh roses, "Dad told me about you today, how you paint butterflies and like classical music. He said you would have taught me to make chocolate fudge and that we would have had many adventures together." The millionaire watched with tears in his eyes, his daughter talking naturally with the mother she had never physically known, but who was deeply present in their lives. "You know what I found out," continued Maria. "Love doesn't end when people go away. It stays and grows in new forms, like you loving Dad, and him finding me because he had your love inside him." Later, while tucking Maria into bed, she now slept. With the light off, no longer haunted by nighttime fears, she asked a question that surprised him. "Dad, do you think we'll have more family?" "What do you mean?" "Well, there are so many kids who need homes, and our house is very big, and—" "You're very good at being a dad," the millionaire chuckled softly. "You want siblings." "I want a house full of love," she said simply, "like we have now, but bigger." 2 years later, they adopted 2 siblings, Peter, 5, and Sophia, 3, whose parents had died in an accident. Maria welcomed them as a perfect older sister, helping them adapt with patience and care that impressed everyone. The house transformed into a kingdom of games, homework done as a group, jokes told during dinners, and stories invented before bedtime. The millionaire hired more staff, but insisted on being present for every important moment. On special occasions, when the whole family was gathered in the garden, usually during sunset, the millionaire looked around and felt a gratitude that transcended words. 3 children who could have been lost in the statistics of abandonment now grew up with total security and love. "Elena," he whispered to the wind, "our family is complete. Not as we planned, but exactly as it should be." And when he watched Maria demonstrating to Peter and Sophia how to plant flowers in their mother's garden, explaining that people we love never really go away, he knew that the circle was closed. A new generation was learning that love overcomes tragedy, that family goes beyond blood, and that second chances are life's most precious gifts. On the last night of summer, while the 3 children slept peacefully, the millionaire remained in the garden, looking at the stars. Everything had started with 3 faint knocks at a junkyard, and now his house reverberated with laughter and life. "Thank you," he said to the universe, knowing that Elena listened from somewhere among the stars. "Thank you for showing me that losing her wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a different chapter." A gentle breeze swayed the roses, and for a moment he could almost hear Elena's familiar laughter, approving everything they had built together through time and the most improbable circumstances. The family was now complete, not in the way they had originally dreamed, but in a way that was even more beautiful and meaningful. And as the crescent moon shone over the house full of love, a single word echoed in the mind of the former lonely millionaire, now a devoted father. Home. Finally, he was home. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new heartwarming stories every day. And tell me, what would you do if you were the millionaire in this story? Share in the comments and help this story reach other people who need to believe that second chances exist.